Okay, hi, and welcome to our podcast. It's not all black and white.
I'm Cera, I'm black.
I'm Matthew, I'm white. This is the Interracial Couple Podcast, and welcome. So today we're going to discuss moving to a foreign country and a little bit of the beginning of that, some of the thought process, and also an insight or input from a friend of yours and how that has both become true and some of the nuances about how it's true and maybe how it isn't.
Yeah, so right before we moved, I went to get coffee with a friend of mine who's a therapist. And I told her about my plan to moving to Kenya. She knew about my plan to moving to Kenya, but now the plan was I was not just moving by myself, but I was moving with Matthew.
She's taking this sucker with her.
And so she was like, Cera, I'm really excited for you that the two of you are doing this move together, but are you really sure? And she was like, moving with someone to a foreign country like she had done with her ex-husband, puts a lot of pressure on the relationship. And actually, she was like, it is going to change the dynamics of your relationship. I really want you to be sure about this. And I was like, no, this is going to be fun. This is an adventure, like him moving with me. And looking back, I see what she meant. It actually does put a lot of stress on the relationship. And I think making that kind of a move can go either way.
It can, but more than just stress. One of the things that you said was that it's like akin to getting married, right? And it's
correct.
It's that the commitment level shifts. And I don't know, is the commitment level because you are going together to do this big thing? Or is the commitment level because usually in a big move, there's one person who's driving it a little bit more than the other person, right? Someone gets a job in another country, in another city. Someone gets accepted into a PhD program somewhere. Or in this case, you were moving back to your home country. And so my guess is that part of that is also there's usually somewhat of an imbalance in who's driving that.
True. But in our case, who was driving the move? I was driving because I was coming back home. So I was driving the move. So you were moving. Were you moving for me?
No. And I think that's maybe part of why this has been so successful is that I definitely didn't. And I think I mentioned this in an earlier podcast. But the choice to move, I knew I was going to do something wild and crazy this year, right? It had been my plan since my kids were very young that the year after they graduated high school, I wanted to just kind of go ride my bicycle around the world. And that was my plan, ride a bike around the world. And then you said, hey, I want to move to Kenya. And I was like, well, I'm riding my bike around the world. And then it came to, oh, okay, that sounds like fun. How long is that going to take, right? And I was like, a couple years. And you're like, 2 years? We're going to be away from each other for 2 years? I said, yeah, it's kind of a long time. And then I said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to ride to South America, and then I'll take a boat to South Africa, and then I'll ride my bike up the coast, and I'll meet you in Kenya. And you're like, how long is that going to be? 9 months to a year? Wait, we're going to be apart for that long? And then it was like, okay, let's just do this. But the point is that I was going to do something anyway, but the move here was definitely your impetus to move here. I never would have moved to Kenya if it wasn't for you, obviously. So yeah, in a certain sense, there was something in it for you, but at the same time, when it came time, it was something that I then chose 100%. So at any time, when any of the challenges that come up or whatever, it was never like I'm doing this for you. It was that I 100% made the choice once I chose to change, or I don't want to say give up, but let go of one idea or plan or dream and replace it with this one. It had to be 100% my choice. So it wasn't that I am now felt like I in any way made a compromise, because it was 100% a free choice that I now want as much as I wanted anything else.
So when we decided, so as we are moving, so that was really important for you to change your mindset that you were doing that for yourself and not so much for me. And also it took off some pressure, to feel like, oh my God, he's moving and changing his entire life because of me.
That's a pretty major burden. Can you, right, anytime you do something big like this, there are always challenges, right? And this has been a great year, but it has not been without its challenges, right?
No, and as we decided to move, there's deciding to move is one thing, but there were so many things that we had to do to make that move happen.
Right. This was a big move. It was getting rid of virtually everything we owned, quitting jobs, all of that stuff, letting everything go. In my case, it was also moving a couple of kids out and getting them situated, and then coming to a place where I didn't speak the language. And I have to say, as much as I've traveled a lot, and this is the third foreign country I've lived in, it's definitely a very, very different experience than it was living in even southern Mexico. Certainly different than living in Germany. And then my travels in Asia were traveling or for work, so it was not wasn't like this is. So it was a big shift.
Yeah, and I think what really helped was your shift in mindset was like really helpful for me. It took off the pressure.
Right, because that's what we're going to say, right? Is that pressure, I can only imagine if it hadn't have been something that I was really excited about and chose 100%, then as the challenges were coming up, there could have been that feeling for me of being resentful or angry with you, or for you feeling guilty or a little bit like, oh, did I make the right choice? I made him do this. And both of those would have been like perfect conditions to undermine a healthy relationship.
And there was sometimes like I would feel like, oh, you did this for me, like would go, let's say, to my family in the village, and you can't speak the language and you're just sitting there looking cute, and I would be like, oh my God, like,
at least I look cute. Can you imagine if I didn't look cute and I would just sit there and then I would have been
and you're
really
just sitting
upset.
there and you don't understand the language, but I'm like, you know what? I did not make you do this. Like, you wanted to move, which was like, sometimes I had to go and like remind myself of that.
Right.
And I feel like the other thing that we should talk about is like, so that was one of the challenges. And then there was like the stress of moving out and giving out our things. It was just so much. And you're packing up everything. Like, I was packing up my life for 10 years, a life that I'd lived for 10 years, and giving that away, or like giving that up. And also like the other hard thing was like, I was saying goodbye to my friends and my community and my family that I've, my chosen family that I had had for those last 10 years. And that took its own emotional toll, and then saying goodbye to the girls. And then at the same time trying to like make enough money to make the move happen, so there was like all this combination of things that really was like so testy in our relationship.
Well, it was also all this like these pieces of things have to fall in order just right. We're giving up the apartment, selling 2 cars and a motorcycle, and making sure that we don't sell them so fast that we then have no way to get around, and then kind of giving things away, selling things, and then getting down to the last couple of days of kind of putting everything together, packing a few things in a little storage unit and all that stuff. And I just remember there were these times where it was just like, I don't even remember what we were fighting about, because it wasn't even about the things we were fighting about. It was just the weight of that move. I just remember this one point you like screaming at me and slamming the car door. And it was just kind of like this awkward moment, because I think Mare and Jade were there, and we were just kind of having this feeling of like, ooh, but it was not personal.
And you're like, I'm moving across the world with this person.
But it wasn't about it. It was situational, And I think that some of those big things, like that, I think that's where this thing of is it's like a marriage. Well, first of all, you have to there's this thing of now you are really in it together, because here we are on the other side of the world. And granted, this is your home country, but you're a very different person when you left. And so therefore it's like we're actually really dependent upon each other since we've been here, and that's created this something that's kind of just beyond a normal relationship, even though we're not yet married.
Yeah, so true. And I feel like if our relationship wasn't as strong, like those fighting moments do you think could have ruined our relationship? I want to say it could.
I think it could have, because I've seen it happen so many times. I've heard so many stories of I have friends as well as other people that I've worked with or met along the way who moved across the country, moved to another city for their spouse, and then it all falls apart. That's like, it seems like that's a really common thing. And I'm guessing though it's all the stress around that. One thing that we
now I kind of like see, like I get it, like why most people would break up after doing all that, because it feels like if your relationship is not strong enough, like the stress of it would just break it.
Totally. But there's another thing too that we didn't have, though it would have made sense in this case, which is that you very often, when two people make a move like we did from California to East Africa, that usually one person, like there's something in particular that someone's going for, right? Like we said before, a PhD program, a job, whatever it is that gets you to move. In that case, then one person actually has something they're going for and is going to build in a community. They're also going to have obligations to that new community. And that can create the sort of rift of one person being a little bit more alone, the other person having obligations to the partner as well as to whatever their endeavor is. In our case, in the first 3-4 weeks, it was all about you going to visit the family. There were a lot of these obligations, and I was kind of along for the ride. And at a certain point, it got a little tiring, but once we rented our place and we got situated, we're fully in this together, and that we both work from home. We both have our own, thing, but it's not we share an office. So I feel like if we had moved here for you to have some kind of job and I'm at home alone and I don't speak the language and I don't know anybody and you are basically at me plus all these other people that you have obligations to, that could have been really hard.
Yeah, I think the other things, I remember once we got here and we rented our own apartment, that to me, our house, just that to me felt like it changed the dynamic of our relationship, because in the US, I moved in with you, so I always felt like it was your place. But when we moved here, it became more like it's our place, and so we started making decisions together. We are buying things together. Our finances, until at that moment, it was very clear who was doing what. I would buy the food. It was really, really clear, what everyone is participating. But when we moved here, it was just we had to combine our finances, in some ways, we had to buy couches. There was just that too, which also deepened our relationship. It changed. I think my friend was right. It's the move made us, it became like a marriage, in all aspects of modern day marriage, in I don't know, what people do in a marriage.
So then kind of going back, what ways do you see that this move has impacted our relationship, both for, you could say the positive or the negative, but really just impacting in general or changed it?
I think it's changed, we both had our own friends. Here, we just have mutual friends and my family. When we go out, we go out together. We do more things. I think it has made us more interdependent of each other. We spend way more, we don't have a life outside of each other, especially in the beginning. We're starting to build that slowly, but we really didn't have a life outside of each other. Everything that we did together, right. So I think and that could go either way. It could be positive and negative, because we started spending so much time together and not having friends that, in LA, when things would be hard, I would retreat and go to my friends, and you talk to your friends. But here, the reality was we didn't have those people. Mm-hmm. So when things were hard, we went to each other, so. Yeah,
and that actually came up a couple of times too, when you were I'm having a difficult time with me, and I have no one that I can just go talk to about it. And that talking to about it, I think we mentioned this before, but you have a community of friends and family in California that when you go to talk about it, you don't necessarily get someone to say, "Oh, I know he's such a jerk," and kind of buddying up to you. You've got a community that will say, "Okay, what is your responsibility in this? What are you going to do?" So therefore, when you go, you actually get recharged because you're actually taking agency. You're oh, I can actually have the impact that I need to. And so then without kind of that that reflector or whatever, where do you go?
I know, and I could.
What happened? That's happened a couple of times. I forget.
What happened was I think I was mourning my friends. What happened is we would have a fight, and I would just drive to my friend's house or or go home 5 minutes away, and I would talk over things, with my friends, and then come back. But here is like I wasn't used to picking up the phone and calling those same friends. It's not like I lost those same friends. It's just like the way that we communicated changed, and so I went through a period of like, I was like, I don't have anyone here. Like, I don't have anyone that resonates and like that I could go talk about our relationship, which was like, it was really hard on our relationship,
Yeah, well, it had its moments anyways.
It did have its moments, but so moving is like when my friend say that about moving and like to really think about it, I was like, oh, it's not a big deal. But now looking back, is like, as a couple, if you're gonna make the choice to move,
it's a commitment.
It is a commitment, and it's gonna impact your relationship positively and negatively.
Yeah, well, so when I think of, there was this moment where we had a little crisis, and for better or for worse, there are times we have crisis. I immediately go to, oh my gosh, what happens if this is over? Maybe this is the end, which is totally silly. But my brain goes there, not so much anymore. Or if it does, I'm like grow up, Matthew. It's okay. But I do have that. But I remember thinking, I actually have to let that be okay, because the pressure of like my life is over now, because and that did happen for a few hours where I'm thinking, I'm halfway around the world. I have nothing back in, like, I have my family back in California, the kids and everything, but I don't have a place to go. Like, my place is now our place. So if that falls apart, then it's like this feeling of I have nothing left. It was this weird sort of short moment, but then I had to be, wait, you know what? That actually, all of that would have to be okay. Because I think sometimes that pressure of if this falls apart, even if we have a challenge, right? Here we are halfway around the world. You don't have your friends to go to. I'm not someone that quite as much who needs my friends. I go on I'll go on a walk for a day or two or whatever to just kind of clear my brain. You like to go and talk with your friends, but to be able to just say, it's okay, whatever it is, and that's, that just to kind of relax into it a little bit.
That you would be fine if we were to break up. And you would be, Yeah,
I mean, we both made it this far in our lives. It's not that it would be the end of the world. But I think sort of holding on to that, like that, because, yeah, like you said, there is a different level to our relationship that when we started packing up, we even joked, as soon as I put in the notice to my landlord that I was giving up the apartment in California, it was like, now, like that was a commitment, right? And then getting on the airplane is a commitment, and then we rented this place, and each of those things, those kind of commitments along the way, they actually feel really good. They feel amazing.
But scary too.
But there's a little bit of like, you're still jumping. It's still like when you jump out of an airplane, even if you're skydiving and there's a backpack with the parachute, it's still scary, even though you got a parachute. And it's a little bit of that, like, oh, we're jumping out of a plane. It's going to be fine. All the safety measures are in place, but still a little bit scary.
Yeah. So, like, I don't know. I just feel like when people decide, like, I think I would give the same. Like, I thought my friend was just being, too caring.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure what's the word. Like, she was being too protective would be the word, of like, she really wanted to make sure that I knew what I was doing. And I think she said that because she had done it before. And I think if I were to give advice to a couple in a relationship that are thinking about moving to a country or like abroad,
or even just any big move, right?
Yeah, any big move is like, it is going to impact your relationship, and like it's a huge commitment.
It's a huge commitment. And I think that once again, like that making that choice, that we're actually doing this together, that it's not for one person or the other. Because also, even for me, like, yeah, you can say I gave up a lot, but I also received so much. I mean, what an amazing gift this, it's been now over a year, and it's continuing. And what an amazing gift it's been. It's been, I love it. I love it. So
do you think the impact was, since this is an interracial podcast, do you think the impact would have been different if we're not an interracial couple?
I don't think so. Well, here's one thing is that I think the expectation for me anyways was that knowing that like moving to Africa, to a place where I don't speak the language, it's not a language like, my Spanish is okay, my German is, I speak fluent German. Those languages have a relationship to my mother tongue, whereas Swahili and Kikuyu have no relation to my mother tongue. So that, so there was a little bit of that kind of complete difference that I think in some ways made it simpler, right? Like, because if I had come and I was like, oh, it's going to be kind of close, it'll be, the reality is that I think any move, whether you move from California to Kenya or you move from California to Arizona or Washington or Mississippi or Alabama, you're still it's still actually a pretty big shift. But you can also, well, I'm just moving to Washington. What's the big deal?
It's similar to, it's
But it's
almost
still a big
similar.
deal.
I think like the emotional
Yeah.
tasking is
Because you're
very
still
the
packing
same.
things
You're still
up,
packing up. You're still
getting
saying
rid of an old
goodbye.
life and everything.
But you know what, you kind of have an idea where you're moving to. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and you think you know a little bit more. So therefore, when things are so much different, when the challenges that came up for you and I, if we had been one state over, it would have been like, these aren't really, we might have minimized that or tried to be like, it can't be that big of a deal and not dealt with things. Whereas in this case, the expectation was already, this is a big deal. And because of that expectation, I think that actually, that helped. It was a little bit like when I trained for a marathon, I was training at over 6,000 feet above sea level, and I went and ran much lower, made it easier to run. In this case, knowing that we were training, the big thing was, oh, it's a big move, we're moving to Kenya, but at the end of the day, moving is moving no matter what you do, right? So I think that moving to Kenya might have been easier on our relationship than moving 1 or 2 states over. I can't say for sure, we haven't done that yet, but it's my sense.
Would you still do it? Would you still move?
Would I do it again? Like
Yeah.
if I had to, well, there's really nothing in my life that I've done that I wouldn't do again given the opportunity. It's been fantastic, and all the challenges that have come up have actually been like really enjoyable, right? In a lot of ways, like not necessarily in the moment, but knowing that that all of the challenges are leading towards sort of me being just a more complete human being. So it feels really good, and really good for our relationship.
Yeah, it's been good for
It's been. I think
yes.
I think it's been really, really nice. We've been done this thing together, and this kind of working together in challenging, in unknown situations has been fantastic.
Yeah, and in wrapping up, I'm just, I want to just I'm just curious to the couples that have moved, and how that was how that impacted your relationship.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm curious too. What the stories of people for whom that didn't work out. Because the other thing too is it doesn't work out for everyone. Sometimes it doesn't. And the other thing too is that sometimes.
And also it has worked out for us this far.
So far. Yeah, we still have plenty of times, but. But also like the strain of that, even if it doesn't end a relationship, can also be, the strain of it can either, leave some kind of like lasting marks on the relationship for the negative, right? Can, leave pain, or it can be like the stuff that makes you stronger. And,
or like it can make like, maybe it's a moment of clarity. Like, I don't want to do this with this human, maybe I made the wrong choice. That too,
Yeah.
So yeah, email us and let us know.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your stories, and any stories that we have. Maybe we'll pick this topic up on a later podcast with any input or other stories from anybody else who has them and would like to share. So thanks again for joining us on our podcast. It's Not All Black and White.
I am Cera. I'm Black.
I'm Matthew. I'm White. This is the Interracial Couple Podcast, and we'll see you next time.